All right, welcome to another episode of the NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we're going to be focusing on Dynasty football strategies and tactics with Kyle from Dynasty Football Expert. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good, man. How are you?
It's going fantastic. And, really, when you look at fantasy football and football, there really is no off season. Obviously, there is, but it's always good to kind of, for me to think about strategies and different things, preparing. And to be honest, I've done Dynasty quite a bit, but this has been my first year doing like as a commissioner of Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I wanted to obviously connect with you on a lot of those like strategies and
Yeah,
timetable and platforms too. I mean, because there's really a lot out there.
yeah,
So definitely want to touch base, and I'm excited to have you on. And first of all, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with Instagram and everything you were talking about.
yeah. I'm out of Oklahoma. I work in the athletics field, work in college athletics, and kind of have just grown. Always been playing fantasy since I was young.
Hmm.
And then I've kind of gotten into more of the social media side of things, and have really started doing what a lot of people are doing, and just trying to kind of promote a brand, and having fun doing it, making some fun graphics, getting to you know reach new people, and meet new people, make new connections. So it's been a lot of fun. I really started growing loving fantasy with about eight of my friends. We're in an 8 team league. Been
Mm.
going on 4 or 5 years in Dynasty, and so we've been we've been living in the off season of trading. We bug each other every day with a bunch of trades, so it's been fun. It's been fun to learn a bunch. So yeah,
Well, yeah. So I last year I did do one. It was a 32 team league Dynasty, and it was just nuts.
yeah,
And it was an IDP league, and so it was through Sleeper, and it was just interesting to see kind of who was willing to do trades and just the whole roster construction and all of that. And
yeah.
so obviously it's going to be different between how many teams you have in it, but when you look at maybe some of the best roster constructions for dynasty fantasy football, talk about that a little bit and what you would kind of recommend.
Yeah, so uh, and most of our main leagues that are I play in like two leagues that I'm
Hmm.
very active in. One is a traditional one quarterback, two running backs, just two wide receivers, tight end, kicker, defense, which is fine. But in our other one, in my main league, we actually do quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, and two flex. So we don't
Two.
have a kicker and we don't have a defense, and so instead we do two flex. We actually just in our we call it our league summit, where we go and we vote on like different rules we might want to implement in the next year, and we actually are moving to Superflex,
Hmm.
and we're doing it in 2026. And so we're starting to kind of see this offseason. Has been kind of fun to see how much more quarterbacks are valued now.
Hmm.
And so yeah, and as far as just the roster spots that we have, that's the kind of the two main ones that I would do. I know a lot of people are moving to Superflex, so it's been interesting. It's taken about 2 years to really get that in our dynasty league. It's kind of hard. I mean, some people are for it, some people are against it. But yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to see over these next few years of how much more quarterbacks are valued.
So you said you're transitioning to 2026. How come you're waiting so long to kind of do that?
So we talked about doing it in 2025,
Hmm.
just to give it 2 years. But with with the off season happening, we do it in sleeper. Sleeper
Hmm.
allows 3 years of future picks on your
Oh,
team,
okay.
and so we were gonna try to do it in 2025, but we actually had a couple trades happen. with like a 2025 first round pick before we had our league summit.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it kind of influenced it to be like, well, let's wait till 2026 because I mean, and Superflex, a quarterback is taken, I mean, you think about right now, there could be 3 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks right
Mm-hmm.
now. So I mean, I'm in a standard league, though, you don't really see quarterbacks taken until the 2nd or 3rd round. So that's kind of where we got off there.
Yeah, so I do Superflex, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in a dynasty, and I love the Superflex. But yeah, it does. You value the quarterbacks, and it's
Yeah.
interesting to see, you know, how that kind of went off. Like some people that weren't used to it, they didn't realize how important the quarterbacks were right away,
Yeah.
and. When you're looking at the quarterback position, I mean, it's just kind of, are you win now mode, or especially if you get someone like Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah.
and I went with I talked about earlier a 32 team league, which I would not recommend.
Yeah.
It was in that roster you could only have one quarterback
Mm-hmm.
on your, unless there was someone who was suspended, or then you could put them deeper into your roster. But it was just nuts. So, but when you look at uh, the best rosters for you, do you do IDP at all, or what are your thoughts on the IDP for Dynasty?
I've done. We always do. In our dynasty league, we were looking at getting into IDP. Some we tried it in a redraft year, like a redraft league last year, and it was just harder. I know a lot of people are getting into IDP. I haven't transitioned to that yet. I'm not big. I mean, I love it. It's hard because then you're getting into where like, well, I have this guy. Like, it's already hard enough if you have a defense, like just a normal defense slot. You have like, well, I'm gonna have Aaron Rodgers, but he's playing the Bears. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you have that, then you have him playing the Bears, and if your running back's going up against the linebacker, then so it's just kind of hard. I think there's a lot of trying to think, I can't think of the word, but yeah, a lot of just blockage there of like, you want
Yeah,
this to
yeah,
happen, but then you also want this to happen. So it's just hard. So I think I
yeah.
like to just stick with the offense and go from there.
I agree, and we also with the dynasty got rid of the defenses and kickers.
Yeah.
With the 32 team, we tried to do the kickers, but that was tough too, because then when you only have one kicker, then
Yeah.
when you have them buy, it's just a mess. When you look at some of the best platforms, you talked about Sleeper, and I know I use Sleeper. Are there any other dynasty platforms that you've used, or that may be worth a try?
The I've only used Yahoo to do keeper leagues.
Mm.
Which Yahoo is fine. I think if you're gonna do a standard redraft, that's okay to use. I'm not a fan of ESPN or like the NFL app to do any leagues.
NFL's horrible. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I don't know if you do it on there. I'm sorry. You should transition very quickly.
Yes, absolutely.
But
Which
yeah,
is so ironic that
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm in a couple redraft leagues on Yahoo. I haven't actually done a dynasty league on there.
Mhm.
Whenever we transitioned to a dynasty league, we went straight to Sleeper. And then in my other main leagues that we were in, I was just like, hey, like if we're gonna transition to dynasty, let's go to Sleeper because I know how good that they are, and they're improving their app every single year. So I've always loved it, and I think it's the easiest to use as far as rookie, like being able to use to do rookie drafts and that kind of stuff. That's the easiest way.
So yeah, I mean, you talk about kind of the rookie drafts, and obviously we completed our first season, and
Yeah,
the rookie draft will, obviously come up probably May. Is that when you usually have rookie drafts and everything? Or when do you usually have them?
yeah. So we usually, because the draft is usually late April.
Hmm.
We never do it before. We always make sure to do it after. Some people do it before, and do. I mean, you're just drafting off of pure talent, I guess.
Mhm.
I think if you're in a league that is really active and really cares, you should probably do it afterwards.
Mhm.
We actually have ours coming up, and like I think it's May 14th.
Okay.
We're going down to Florida, gonna have a big kind of like a little football reunion. So
Sweet.
we always try to plan it. Like last year, we were all getting together early June. So
Mhm.
we did it. We waited a little bit longer. Did it early June. I think the best time is to do it after the draft. Give it a couple weeks to see. Let people think about where the rookies actually ended up in the NFL, and then that kind of gives you time to analyze it. But then after that, I mean, then nobody gets hurt. Nobody's hurt.
Mhm.
It's all kind of fair game, and you just kind of go from there in the off season.
We'll talk about that a little bit, the offseason, the timelines. I think I connected with you basically about asking about when do you start your league and all of that, because typically, if the league is done, there are people that don't pay attention, and that's part of it. But then trying to, like, if you're going to start the league, to make sure everyone is paying attention, and also, obviously, if it's a paid one, everyone is paid up as well. So
Yeah.
talk about what you do as far as timelines with leagues.
Yeah, so we kind of do it. I mean, in my main league, we're locked in all the time.
Hmm.
We had we have a couple teams. It's been kind of fun to see. We have had a couple teams that have kind of tanked, not tanked, but just sold their
Yep.
big guys while they can. Got in a bunch of a bunch of rookie picks.
Hmm.
And they've kind of seen that developed. They kind of traded their young guys out now.
Hmm.
And so now they kind of have some youth again, and they're trading their other young pieces for veterans. So right after the week 18, we actually open up the trade market.
Oh,
Uh,
right after week 18.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So week 18 hit, and yeah, it was kind of guns a blazing. The NFL playoffs are going on, and we're trading guys for next year. So
Okay.
it's kind of crazy. In my other league, we do it. We open it up about 3 weeks before the rookie draft. So we do the rookie draft a little bit later in that one, usually
Yeah.
late June. So we open the trade market back up about early June. Let that kind of start flowing a little bit. We usually get 4 or 5 pretty good trades in, for draft picks and stuff like that. So it's not as active throughout the whole year, but once the season hits, the league's pretty active.
And so, obviously, you've got 8 people that are locked in, or at
Yeah.
least kind of committed. Um, what would you say as far as when we talk about like trading draft picks? Like, you want to make sure people are committed from year to year, and especially when like a startup. Um, what would you talk a little bit about kind of trading those draft picks? I mean, do you want to make sure that someone is paid for the next year before you kind of allow them to trade like future draft picks?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would. I mean, it's if you're gonna trade draft picks, especially if you're trading like getting rid of all of them and you don't have any desire for them. Usually that means the guy's locked in for this year, and he's going all in for it. And then
Hmm.
if that happens, he doesn't win. He's mad. He doesn't want to come back. I mean, yeah.
Hmm.
Then it just kind of it's really hard to find someone new. I was
Hmm.
actually in a league like that where he never cared about draft picks. He always just sold them and sold them. He was in our league for like 3 years, and then he actually ended up leaving. And thankfully, we had one of our another friend that was really close to us that was just like, yeah, sure, I'll take it on. But I mean, and in that one, in our other dynasty league, I mean, we have rookies and veterans in that league.
Hmm.
So it's like a 6 round draft, like a
Oh,
rookie
wow.
draft type of thing, where it's just more rookies that get drafted, but then you can kind of pick up a few free agents if you wanted to. But yeah, I mean, he had 0 picks for the next 3 years, but thankfully he took it on. I mean, his team was pretty good still, so he was still able to have some fun with it. But yeah, he's worked on selling some of his guys to be able to get draft picks back, and just to be able to get some youth for the next few years.
Yeah, and that's kind of some of our rosters. I try to do a little bit of both because you need to have some veterans. But when you look at some of the trades as well, from a commissioner's now, are you a commissioner in any dynasty leagues?
I'm a co-commissioner in one, but one of my good friends does the other one.
Okay, so with that, talk a little bit about dynasty commissioners' do's and don'ts, because when trades are going down, you want to kind of make sure. To me, as a commissioner, I want to make sure that everyone is valued, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone's going to agree on a trade or whatever, because you have a trade where someone sees value today, and the other one sees value tomorrow.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, like, as a commissioner, what should you do with trades and just kind of overall taking care of the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it, best. Like, some people value people a lot more than other people value that same person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Dynasty, it's kind of crazy. I like to go back and look at trades and see kind of how they've played out, because sometimes you don't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, especially with the young guys, right after rookie drafts happen, I mean, think about it. We had a trade go down. What was it, 2 years ago, I think, and it was Jonathan Taylor right before he broke out, and Cooper Kupp for Tutu Atwell and like a 2nd round pick.
Oh wow! Okay.
And like before, Cooper, and this was before Cooper. This was before the year before Cooper Kupp had his breakout year. So it was kind of like, at the time Cooper Kupp was going down, I just drafted Tutu Atwell. One guy valued him a lot. Didn't think that Jonathan Taylor was going to do anything either. So it kind of tried to pay up a little bit. He saw some value there. It went down. We all were like, oh my goodness, what is going on? But it's just, as a commissioner, I've kind of learned you just have to let it happen. When you start vetoing things, it just really doesn't allow people to have freedom, and doesn't allow people to really think. They're like, oh, it's just going to get vetoed. So I think the biggest thing is to allow people to value people the way they want. And, if there's going to be some pretty fair trades, and there's going to be some really crappy ones. And, you never know how it's going to end up. I mean, that, a 2nd round pick could have been Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it worked out, for him. But you just have to let people value the way that they want. I think, just kind of speaking about value a little bit, a big thing has been the Dynasty trade calculators. I don't know if you've ever messed around with those a little bit. I think there's pros and cons to those. It's good just to kind of see a little bit, to get, sometimes you just need affirmation, because you don't want to talk to other league mates, about the trade that's going to go down, and then, they swoop in and offer them a better deal. So I think it's good to help people understand value, especially someone who's newer to Dynasty. They can kind of see, because, if you're getting in a Dynasty, you don't value these 1st and 2nd round picks like others do, whenever they probably should be valued more. That's what can lead to really bad trades down the line. And so I think they're good, but I don't think that you should base everything off of, what the calculator says, because, you have your values and they have theirs too. So
is there like a website that you use for that?
There's, if you just search Dynasty Calculator, there's one. It literally is just called like dynastycalculator.com. But the one I like the most is called Keep Trade Cut. There's a bunch of few like little links on the side, but if you just go to their trade calculator, that's the one that I've agreed with most of their values. Overall, it's pretty easy. And I mean, they had the dynasty calculator, and then, even if you're deciding between 3 players, like a trade cut situation, they have those kind of options. And it's good. And they value picks pretty well, as from what I've seen. But you have to, with those, it's all based off of a 12-man league. So you have to kind of pay attention with that. Because if you put a late first, especially in an 8-team league, put a late first, I mean, they're thinking picks 110 to 112, but really, if you have pick 107, 108, so you have to remember that as well when you're thinking about that.
Yeah. So you talked about that a little bit. Talk about like dynasty keeper leagues, and because what the one I'm doing is basically it's just you keep your whole roster.
Yeah.
But keeper's a little bit different. Do you do keeper then as well?
I do one a keeper redraft type of league, where we keep 2 players every year. And so, I mean, it kind of just varies, there's no limitations. You can keep 0, you can keep 1, you can keep 2. But you also kind of have to think about it, because those are your first 2 picks of the draft, which can kind of be tricky, because, if you're taking, and this isn't a super flex league as well. So we have to remember that. And so, wide receivers and lower, mid running backs aren't, you could draft 2 quarterbacks and then still get those guys that you wanted to keep. So you kind of have to think about that. I know my favorite keeper league I've done, I did it for a couple of years. And I know a couple other guys who have done it, is where they would get to keep their player where they drafted them. And then every year that they kept them, it moved up the draft board. So if you drafted this guy in the 14th round, then you could keep him, and they would be your 13th round pick.
Interesting.
So it would continually move up until it went to the first round, which, I mean, if they're playing for 13 years, then, well, you got really lucky.
Right.
But so yeah, that's kind of fun too. So if you hit on a Josh Jacobs in the 5th round last year, then you could keep him in the 4th round this year. So that's probably my favorite keeper league that I've done.
Now, when you look at like the rookie leagues, the rookies that are coming out, and do you have some favorites and some dynasty rookies that you're watching?
Yeah. So and until the combine, I was really high on Jackson Smith Najigma. I think that he is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 here, especially in PPR type leagues, or half PPR even. It's hard to find players like that that should be consistent from the get-go. I think this kind of happened with Garrett Wilson last year, and people didn't realize how good he was in a PPR setting, and people kind of faded him. I mean, and I shouldn't say fade, because there is guys with Drake London and Chris Olave. Last year's wide receiver class is probably going to be one of the best we've seen. But I think, you have to get JSN in either, right after Bijan. I think he's kind of proved that he's going to be more valuable than Jamar Gibbs, who I think is the 3rd rookie off the board this year. I'm really interested to see where Quentin Johnston goes.
Wide receiver out of TCU. Yeah.
I think that I think he could be really good. I hope he is. My wife's a big Oklahoma football fan, so I've watched a lot of TCU over the last years, which is why I also really like Kendre Miller, the running back out of TCU. I think he has really good size. I was sad that he didn't get to do as much at the combine that he wanted to, or that I wanted him to do.
Right.
But it kind of also helps, because I really hope that he can fall in a few drafts because I have a few second round picks. So I would love for him to fall. And then I also really liked Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. He's got really good size. His speed is, not a 4.3, but I talked a lot. I actually did an article about that today, and I think he's got enough size that he hits the gaps hard, and I really would like to, if he was there at the 106 to 108, I would be very confident. Even if he doesn't go to a great spot, even if he's in a little bit crowded backfield, I think we saw a lot last year of how rookies can really make that impact on the running back side. I mean, there was 7 or 8 fantasy relevant running backs last year that were rookies. So those are the kind of the bigger names that I like to see right now.
So yeah, I mean, when you go into, okay, so this has been our first year of 10-team Dynasty League, and we have got 19 roster spots, and we can kind of dive into that a little bit here. But strategy-wise, just saying maybe you that you have not traded any of your draft picks, and we do a rookie only 3-round draft. So are you, and it's a super flex, so are you just kind of automatically targeting the quarterbacks that are out there because it's super flex?
Yeah, I think I've not actually done a rookie super flex draft yet. So it is kind of interesting because I've been trying to research a lot to be able to put that information out. I think that you kind of have to, unless you have 2 good quarterbacks. But if you have 2 good quarterbacks, you probably don't have one of the top 4 picks because you should be fine, unless they got hurt or something. But I think it in a super flex, if you have Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow, then I would probably go get a wide receiver or somebody else to to complement your team well. But if you only have one solid quarterback, then I think you have to get one of those top 2 to 3 guys every year. Unless there's a Bijan Robinson that's sitting there. But if he wasn't there, I'm sure that Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and probably Anthony Richardson now are all would go top 3.
So kind of on that, so on my roster, I have so quarterback wise, I have Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence. Those are my 2 main ones. And then on the bench, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with him yet, but I've got Zach Wilson still. I've got Kenny Pickett. And I also have Sam Howell. So I've got enough young quarterbacks. So here's my question on quarterbacks then. I had someone throw me a possible trade, and it was they wanted to get Dak. And this is actually before he signed and everything, but Derek Carr for Dak Prescott, and I think there were some picks in there. I'll see if I can find it here. But when you look at Dak versus Derek, what would you do that?
It's interesting because I think it's always been so hard with Carr. I think he can be a good quarterback. He just makes really simple mistakes a lot. And I mean, I also think that his defense in Las Vegas or Oakland has always let him down, which makes it even harder for Derek because he has to go out there and throw the ball even more. I think this year with the new offensive coordinator in Dallas, I don't know exactly what they're going to do yet. It will be interesting. I mean, you think the last 3 years they've thrown the ball 50 times a game, which has kind of helped Dak. And now with CeeDee Lamb, that connection there has really helped. I think if you were able to get a couple picks in there with. Did you happen to find the picks
I
with?
did, and actually this one, and it's a little different than I thought. Actually, this one was straight up Derek for Dak, and I rejected it. So
Yeah. I think from what we know right now, I would keep Dak. And I mean, if they got fancy with it and added something else with, like a solid wide receiver 2 or something with Derek, then I probably would take Carr, and a wide receiver 2 over Dak, just because, if you want to have fun and have some potential, with Carr, with Olave, and maybe Michael Thomas, I don't know, but I think Carr could be there. He's probably in that quarterback 10 to 12 range. Dak is probably in the 8 to 10 range right now. So that's where I would rank him. So it's close, but I think I would go with the guy that's proven it more and more at Dak for right now.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I mean, we talk about rookies or, current NFL players, and it's not just in a vacuum. It is, they're obviously the talent that's around them, the coaching and all of that. I mean, so that's important to kind of keep that. And when you look at like some of the rookies that you talked about, quarterback wise, obviously there's a couple names up there: Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis. Are there any? Obviously we don't know kind of what's going to happen, but as far as like best landing spots for them fantasy wise, or if some of them end up like with Houston or Carolina, are you just going to kind of stay away from them, or maybe just stash them for later?
Yeah, that's kind of been my biggest thought. If the Texans traded up, or to get Bryce Young, it's kind of like, well, do I want Bryce Young? It's kind of hard, gauging that, because you're like, well, he's really talented, and they also have the pick 12, which I think that I guess maybe if they moved up, they might have to trade that pick 12. I don't really know. But if they were able to get a JSN, a Jordan Addison, or Quentin Johnston at that pick 12, it would give me more confidence. But right now, Bryce Young would, his only receiver is Nico Collins. So it's hard. I think you still have to draft him above CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson just based on talent. And, that would be, sometimes you're thinking about, do I draft Joe Burrow, with, a lower end team from that draft? If he had gotten drafted to a bad team, you're like, well, do I still draft Joe Burrow? But I think you still have to do that. That's what I've learned with rookies. Sometimes you have to draft on landing spots, once it gets past those first 5 to 6 guys, draft on landing spots past those 5 to 6 guys. But in those 5 guys, I don't think that you can overlook talent. We saw with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, landing spots weren't amazing, but they still put up really good numbers as rookies, and that's just based on talent alone.
So we were talking a little bit about drafting and rookies as well. With your dynasty leagues, do you have a taxi squad? Are you familiar with the taxi squads?
Yeah, we do. We have a taxi squad in both. We actually we increased our rookie draft to a 4 rounds, just because we only have 8 teams in it. If we had 12 teams, we would only keep it at 3. So we actually increased. We had our taxi squad at 4 guys, or at 5 guys. We just increased to 6, just to be able to trade some picks. Some guys that are tanking, or that want to rebuild. It's good to just be able to allow them an extra spot to keep those guys. Last year I had sold a lot of my guys to kind of to try to win now. Didn't end up happening, but I didn't have any picks last year, but I was able to pick up guys like Wanda Robinson, Romeo Dobbs, and those kind of guys that I was able to keep on the taxi squad throughout the year, not have to give up roster spots for them, because it's taken a chance, drafting those guys and trying to find roster spots, and so I think that the biggest thing that Sleeper does is allow those taxi squads just to develop guys. That's the biggest thing.
Well, yeah. So with that taxi squad, obviously, there may be some kind of best practices or whatever, but do you kind of leave the taxi squad? It has to be rookies, or do you allow maybe second year players or maybe little used players, or how do you utilize that taxi squad?
Yeah, so right now we only have it with rookies. We've talked about doing it for second years, which I wish we could have done because I had Justin Fields last year, or I guess 2 years ago on my taxi squad. Had to bring him up off the taxi squad. He started the year off really bad, needed some extra roster spots, cut him, and then the next week he goes off for 40. So then you're like, well, crap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I know Sleeper allows it to, I mean, it has a time frame that, that you want it. But I also, I think if you allowed second or third year players to be on it, it would only be if they had never come off the taxi squad. So like, thinking about last year with Romeo Dobbs and Wanda Robinson on mine, I needed somebody to play that week. There was there was a time span where they were doing well. Took a chance on them, took them off the taxi squad. Can't put them back on the taxi squad. But so if I was able to keep those guys on there, I would probably keep them on there another year if I could. If I didn't have some of the lower end draft picks. But I like it with just the 1 year, and then it kind of allows some flexibility of other guys being able to pick them up if they would like.
So you do it that once they're off the taxi squad, you can't put them back on.
Correct. Yeah. So then it has to be on an official roster spot, so to say.
But if you say start a rookie off on your roster, he hasn't been on the taxi squad yet, you can put him on there.
So we do it until we lock taxi squads Thursday night football of week 1. So
okay.
You can have your rookies be kind of flexible throughout the off season, especially especially that first round. Usually, if you have an extra roster spot, you might as well. You're not gonna keep Jackson Smith-Njigba on the taxi squad a year.
Right.
Put that guy on your roster, put somebody else in your taxi squad before, pick somebody up as a free agent, then put them on there.
So the way we started the year last year, and obviously first year kind of commissioner of Dynasty, is I left it kind of open, because when we talked about it ahead of time, not everybody kind of understood that. And so some people were starting to kind of overuse it, and even for some veterans, and we had to kind of step in and say, hey, only first and second year players. So I think we're going to try to do a transition to first year players or first and second year. As a commissioner, I want to try to. It's tough, the cat's already out of the bag, right? So, how would I, as a commissioner, kind of rein that in and just kind of say, okay, well, this is the way it has to be. What's the best way to approach that?
Yeah, I think you just gotta be honest with it and just just kind of tell them how it is. And just explain to them how the taxi squad, if a guy comes off the taxi squad, they can no longer go on it. Sometimes at first, whenever I was first using Sleeper, I brought a guy off and I was like, oh, I'll just put him back on it. But then I was like, well, crap, you can't do that. But yeah, I think it's just a simple, just making it simple for them to understand. If since you guys kind of had some freedom on it, you could try out doing first or second year players. But I know Sleeper doesn't, they don't have like a self check.
Yeah, they don't.
So
they
then
don't
you have to go check everybody's roster.
Yep.
Yeah, we actually had a guy in our Dynasty League he had Keyshawn Vaughn on his roster for like 3 years, and we all knew, or I should say on his taxi squad, we all knew.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't put anybody on his taxi squad the next year because he didn't have any draft picks. So like it was just kind of a running joke. That he was on there, but yeah. So as a commissioner, I think the easiest way is to do it rookies only, unless you have a bunch of guys that are have some integrity and make sure that it's only first or second year guys, and that they're not going back and forth after the year starts.
So it's a 10-team league. There's 19 spots total, but let me see. Let me make sure. So we've got one. Yeah, so 19 spots, and then 3 taxi squad right now. So going into the rookie year, then should we increase the taxi squad or not?
How many? So you guys, you have what was the roster like quarterback wise?
So there's one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end. We got 2 flexes and another super flex.
And you had IDP as well, correct?
So not with this one, no IDP with this one. No,
I mean, I think so. That's about. I mean, you have 10 roster spots ish, 9 or 10. I think 10, right?
11.
I mean, we play it. Let me look exactly. We have a pretty deep
10.
league, especially because we have only 8 people. So we're able to have a few bench spots. I mean, we have 1, 2, 3. We have 13 bench spots.
Okay.
But we also, like I was saying, I mean, we have 8 people. So if you think 8 people times, 2 extra players, that's another 20 people that are off, 20 to 30 people that are off the board. But we're just adding those to our players anyways. So I think, if you have 8 or 9 extra bench spots like that, plus a taxi squad, I think that is probably plenty. You might add one more. Now, and you said you had 3 taxi squads or 4?
3. And so as kind of like thinking about this, so we actually do have 10 bench spots, but so 3 taxi squad. But right now, it's kind of been an understanding, and everyone's kind of gone along with it that it's first or second year players. Yeah. But if we were to say only rookies, then we wouldn't have to add any necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to go just 3 taxi squads and then just add an extra bench spot, that's the way to go about it. Is your league? Do you guys trade a lot of draft picks though?
So, and we haven't really had anybody do that because that was the thing. We were starting. There were a couple that were not as committed, and one person we actually we had to find a replacement for, and thankfully I had a buddy that was ready and came. Actually, there's 2. One during the season that came in and he ended up winning the league. It was crazy. There was a guy that was just not paying attention at all.
Yeah.
And so it brought this guy in and he won it. And then I had another one this past season. Or in the off season we had to kind of change as well. And so that was a little bit hard, but so we haven't traded draft picks because we wanted to make sure everyone is paid. So And we're kind of developing this league. So I had made sure everyone was paid by March 1st. And so we've kind of gotten it paid and everything. And now people are starting to kind of look at trades. I've thrown a bunch out there, but haven't had anybody really, take anything yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think once so I would leave the taxi squad as with three,
Okay.
just in case, just for now. If you guys are able to see an increase, in trading draft picks, I would recommend probably going up to four, just because then if you gain a draft pick, and say there are, you have just second round guys sometimes, or
Mm-hmm.
even those early quarterbacks that might take a few weeks to develop. That at least gives them an extra spot to have. If you do have 4 or 5 draft picks, then you don't have to use a roster spot for them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would, since there's no reason yet to add, especially since you guys don't, you have 3 draft picks, and it sounds
Yeah.
like you guys probably will all have 3 draft picks
Yep.
by the time the rookie draft comes. Then it just allows them to, whoever you drafted, put them on there. Or if they want to, their third round guy, if they want to exchange him out later, and if somebody gets some hype down the road in July, they
Mm-hmm.
want to add them to the taxi squad. They can swap them out if they want, but then they're not adding a bunch of the other 60 rookies onto their taxi squad. Uh,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be relevant as much.
I do like that. Then locking the dynasty, or sorry, the taxi squad before the first game starts. I like that.
Yeah, that's been the bet. Like, I mean, there's no reason to lock it, after the draft or anything, after your rookie draft. There's no point to do that. That just gives the other guys in your league time to figure out who they are going to believe in, and just kind of watch them grow throughout the year.
So one last thing that I kind of wanted to ask, then we had issues with some of the pay sites because some of them like, charge different things, and it's interesting. I don't know if you have people who are international kind of in your leagues and everything. So
No,
um,
I do not.
we've got a guy that's in the UK that's in the league, and actually we have another guy that's in Canada. And so it's kind of interesting with some of that. And I've used some different sites, and I guess I wanted to get what do you use for like the your paid leagues for I don't know, collecting payments.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've never really ran into issues because I don't do a ton of leagues outside of like people I know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
I
which
I
is
I
good, which is
I
good.
I don't like to be in leagues where I mean, it's fine to be in leagues if everybody's going to play, but it's also, you can't really trust those guys as much. You don't know what you're getting into sometimes with leagues, because you don't know if they're going to play, if some people are going
Yep.
to be crazy aggressive about things. And so, I mean, I've always just played, and played, and I should say, and paid through like Venmo, Cash App, something like that, or just in cash. I've never ran into a situation, playing with a guy internationally. I've never done anything like that.
So I'm glad that you brought up Venmo. So I've used, and I won't bring up the name. Trying to think of what it was. League Safe. So I used League Safe, but they're obviously with that their costs and
Yeah,
everything, the extra and everything,
yeah, they got to
and
make money somehow. Yeah,
right. And with Venmo, there are no costs. You can just kind of leave it there.
yeah,
Um, our problems, what we found out is that internationally, this guy from UK, they don't have Venmo in the UK.
yeah,
And so we had to figure out because we also tried. I had a couple people last year. The guy in the UK, he used PayPal,
yeah,
and that was helpful to have that option. But then there was a cost for the transfers, right?
yeah,
And so as the commissioner, I ended up paying them, and you just kind of do that first year. So we kind of had to try to figure that out, and everybody in the league can use Venmo except for the guy in the UK. So we ended up adding like a couple dollars on to kind of help with that payment. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. You kind of look at those things. Obviously, when you have a paid league, you want the money to go to, the league members and
Yeah.
not all these other fees.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of crazy. I guess I've never really thought about playing with guys internationally and trying to figure out how to get dues. I mean, I play a lot. I do a lot of best ball leagues, on Underdog and Yahoo and that type of thing. So like,
Okay. Yeah.
I pay through there, just when they
Hmm.
upload stuff, but they can get their. I've never had any issues like that. That's kind of crazy. Didn't ever think about that.
So I definitely appreciate you coming on and talking Dynasty. This definitely helped me. I'll learn a lot more.
Yeah, appreciate
When
it.
you look at kind of uh, articles, talk a little bit about just the articles that you're putting out and wherever we can find you.
Yeah, so I got a little opportunity. It's called Dynasty Pros. They're big on Twitter. They have an Instagram, but they're a lot bigger on Twitter. They have a website, just dynastypros.com. I've started writing a few just rookie spotlight articles
Mhm.
throughout. Over the past month. I'll kind of do a little bit more of those leading up to the draft. Probably the first next couple of weeks and maybe a little
Mhm.
bit in April. But once that draft hits, I'll start diving really a lot deeper into just the next year. A lot of rankings on my Instagram. I currently have all my dynasty rankings. Uh,
Mhm.
it was at Dynasty Football or at Dynasty Football Expert on Instagram. A
Mhm.
little bit different than Twitter, but
Mhm.
yeah, my Instagram I'm able to use a lot more of information on my graphics, and so that's helped me gain a few more followers that way, get a little more engagement. Twitter still trying to figure out a little bit, but yeah, I'm trying to do both, trying to get the same post on both, the best way
Mhm.
I can.
Yeah, all good stuff. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on, Kyle. I look forward to those articles and continue to learn about Dynasty. And so, uh, everyone definitely subscribe, check your Instagram out, and
Appreciate that.
look forward to the draft. I'm excited for
Yeah,
it.
I'm excited. I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Kyle.
Thank you.